Welcome to Improv Your Parenting, the art of turning parenting into playing. Today we're joined by Declan King. Declan is a theater maker trained in musical theater at ICMT Belfast. Influenced by Fella McDermott and Patrick O'Reilly, his work emphasizes improvisation and physical theater. He's collaborated with major theater companies across Ireland and the UK, taking on various creative roles. In addition to working with ensemble and established groups, he's created original productions like The Plantain and Rumble in the Ensemble. He also facilitates workshops for children and teenagers, incorporating improvisation and immersive learning into his practice. Declan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm going to start off this interview with the same question I begin with every single one. How do you interact with kids, and what role does improv play in those interactions?
Well, I'm not a parent.
Okay.
I've been around kids all my life. My mom was a childminder. I worked a lot in youth summer camps growing up, and now I work in theatre, so I often work in children's theatre.
Cool.
And more recently, I've started doing some volunteer work, clown work for children in disadvantaged areas. So quite a lot of interacting with children. And I guess it's always kind of been, and often for myself, I was unnamed and I wasn't able to describe it to myself, but playful, at their level, engaged, responding to what they're responding, and trying things out. And I think that would still be the way I would like to do it, but I think I probably have more, well, we'll see now, but I think I've got more language and more understanding and more an idea of where that all comes from. In terms of improv, it's kind of funny. I was trying to think of this, and like, really, I feel like we're all very familiar of children playing, right? That's just something in our head. And improv sounds like something different, but in my head, it's quite the same thing in lots of ways. The most ideal way we would like to improvise is with the relaxed nature of how a kid just plays. It's just responding. And if you're having a tea party with your little niece, you're not thinking about an audience, but it's just as captivating and it's just as fun, right? And you're responding to them, you are a character, you're listening to them, you have to respond, and they're totally in it. And that's the way you would want to be on stage, ideally, right? I always find that super interesting. And it's like, when I interact with kids, because there is no audience, they are so relaxed and they're just in it. Then it kind of relaxes you and says, oh, yes, actually, this is what I want. What I need to do is literally just follow you, listen to you. We're not trying to create. We're not thinking about rules. We're not thinking of anything. We're just being, and it's what's fun for, well, usually for them, but also for us.
Usually,
yeah. And you're like, okay, let's follow down this rabbit hole. And as you know, kids will do the same thing over and over again. And it's like, okay, let's find the enjoyment. This is still fun. Let's keep playing with it. So I suppose I would try and interact that way. And I think it really is just being like that honing in when you're with them, when you're playing. It's either down at their level, you're listening to them, you're locked in. You know what I mean? Let's do this thing fun, and this is great. And I'm not doing it. I'm not faux playing tea party. I'm not faux doing the silly dance. I'm like, yeah, let's be in it together and lead the way.
There's an earnestness to it of like, I'm going to fully invest in this interaction. Something you brought up there that made me think, playing with kids like this is good training for improvisers to learn how to improv.
Yeah.
So it's going the opposite direction of where I'm trying to, use improv in parenting. This is more like use parenting to become a better improviser.
Look, if you want to be a better improviser, have a child. It's simple.
Oh my God, yeah, completely.
Forget classes. It's probably cost the same. I do think it's interesting because, and maybe this isn't the way this conversation should be going because we want to figure it out, but if you're thinking about it, literally any parent or any adult will be able to play with a child for a certain extent, right? You say to someone, get up on stage and improvise.
Oh, Jesus.
They freeze, whatever.
Exactly.
But what they're doing is the same. It's still a fake scenario, a character. So it is that kind of thing of when you're acting or improvising, which is, again, the same thing in my head in lots of ways. It's that relaxing and you want to listen. And I suppose the play is, I feel, maybe sometimes the easiest way in for you to remind yourself, oh yeah, this is where I actually want to get to when I'm on stage. Even if you're acting a scripted thing, it's where you want to get to. I find when I'm acting as something scripted, I want to get to how I am when I'm improvising. I want to get to how I am when I'm playful with children.
It all comes back to that. When you're doing the scripted thing, it's really just, how could I be playful here? The script demands. And then when you're improvising, it's how can I playful with my partner and doing that. What does that look like when you are interacting with kids? How do you bring yourself to that? I'm in this moment, I'm invested in you in this activity.
Yeah, it kind of depends because I mean, obviously, kids are different. Some will come at you with energy and they're not afraid and they want to play, and you're like, okay, let's go. And then other
Yeah.
ones, you have to actually break it because, you're an adult. So oftentimes there's that expectation of this is how you're going to act as an adult. You're not going to behave a certain way, or the way you're dressed might signal
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So you often need to signal to a child that I'm up for playing. And it's a conscious thing, right? It mightn't necessarily be a natural skill that you have. Like it's one of these social skills that you're like, okay, I've got to consciously get down low or build up with a few smiles and a few looks and a few just silly faces so that okay, this is a playful adult. Then you can, it is a case of, as you offer something but they really want to do something,
Mhm.
following their lead and just being a good teaching and like just letting go, because if they're not interested, they're not interested, right? So and
Yeah.
what you offer,
And you're
so it's
not
just
going to
like
get them there.
exactly right. So
Yeah.
you got to either improve what you're offering or just go with what
Exactly.
they have. This is fun. I'm offering yourself as I'm a fun adult. I'm going to be with you. And I mean, there is technical things I think as well, like, getting down low, your eye contact, you're listening, you're
Mhm.
playing on what they're interested in, not trying to force them into what you're interested in.
Mhm.
I think all those things help you to connect more with the child and not being bored when it's the same thing over and over again, because that's what they love. And then it's kind of again finding a bit more silliness. And something I love to see, like you might have uncles or something, the grumpy old uncle or something like this,
Mhm.
and you kind of
Yeah.
think actually you might be a little bit afraid, but there's some kids who can kind of crack that shell and they can be funny, and it's just like a little stick out of the tongue which breaks that character. It's
Mhm.
magical, right? Saying as
Yeah.
well, I don't think there's any type of person in particular that can do it, right? That can be silly with a child. And I think so many people might feel like, oh, I couldn't be the silly one with the child. But let's face it, they're children. We can make an adult's decision to go and be a little bit silly, and then, something will happen.
I was thinking that brings up a point of, is it the kid that's the hard one, or is it the adults kind of voice in their own head that makes this thing difficult for a lot of people?
Mm. Yeah, I do think it's the adult voice in your head. In some ways, I think that will stop you being silly and fun, and people will obviously pick up on that, and that's an authentic thing.
Yeah.
Um, that again, it's even on stage when you are improvising with an official capital I. The awkward ways you think that it's something, right? And you think that's even that Shakespearean stance, or it's a changing my voice, whatever. And really, you want to just be like, just be yourself and being playful. I mean, there is
Yeah.
something with children, and then I suppose it's like, they're gonna do what they want to do. So if
Yeah.
they're not in for it right now, I
No
mean,
matter
and
what you. Yeah.
yeah, and you might be able to turn them, but it isn't all about the adult, I guess. I mean, children
Good
are
point.
they're independent creatures, people.
Yeah.
So they'll want to play something, and if they don't think something's fun, they're not going to do it, and they'll probably let you know. That's all right. They're not. If you want to talk about improv terms, like trying to be good scene partners,
No.
they're like real characters. In
Exactly.
you've met this real character and you're trying to engage with it, and sometimes they're great and they're really into it, and sometimes they're not. So it's not necessarily your
Yeah.
fault either.
So then it sounds like it's very much a mindset of the adult of, am I going to engage with this person who has agency, who has their own thoughts? And if so, how am I going to do that? Because it's not just like a one off, can I get them to do what I want them to do?
Mhm.
More of, how do I engage them so that they engage me?
I think that's actually cool what you said there. Not getting them what I want them to do, right? Because I think that is
Yeah.
the way you're going to get frustrated. And
Yeah.
I feel like for people and parents who mightn't work with children a lot, and they're like, you know what, I'm going to put myself out of my comfort zone, maybe be a bit silly, try something out. And it falls on its face. The kid's just not like, just that day they're not interested in it.
Yeah.
It's that kind of classic thing where it's like you organize a big trip to the cinema or a trip to Disneyland, and just on the day the kid is kicking up and you're kind of like,
Exactly.
for fake, like
This
how
caused
can
me
you
so much. Yeah.
exactly, I was trying so hard for you. So
Yeah.
On a smaller scale, when you're playing with children and being with them, it's a thing you learn. Sometimes just things that don't work out and not to take that personally, but also being able to follow what they're interested in. You can go up to a 5-year-old and you have, I don't know, a big old story about a dragon that you want to do, and you've built some wings or whatever, and they're interested in the tiny little pebble that you said was the egg. That's all
Exactly.
they want to look at, right? And it's,
Yeah.
you can try and push it in the way that you want,
Mm.
or let go and say, okay, I want to go with what is of interest. Let's see what can we find in this. And that, I think, is the skill of the improviser.
Hmm.
Notice that your heart's beating, that you want to do something, and in that moment being able to say, can I let go of this, and now can I refocus my attention on what is happening, what is of interest, what can I bring of myself, and what can I offer as an adult and as an individual. There's this aspect, the colors of it, there's sounds of it, being able to catch yourself in that moment being like, this is what's interesting to them, I want to follow, that kind of way.
So letting go of your expectations,
Mm,
figuring out where they focused, and then accepting that offer and saying, how do we play with that?
hmm
Whatever that is.
yeah, and it's also a thing of like, and again, it's so obvious when you say it like that, like that's how you want to be with a scene partner, right, on the actual stage. But
Yeah.
like, even
Yeah.
different types of children play different ways. Now, I'm not a parent, and there's levels to this, but say you have a child who's a bit more quiet and reserved. You're at a party or a theme park, kind of a bit nervous to sit out. There's a level of, okay, can I encourage them to go on the slide or whatever and push them a bit? So obviously that's a level, but there's
Mhm.
also a level of, okay, if they're sitting out, well, what can we do that's fun here, and how can I engage them in a gentle way that's what they're interested in?
Yeah.
Again, I think it's another thing of responding, and as we kind of say, it's offers, but not being really connected to the offer that you can't respond to it. And I think
Mhm.
what is, as adults and parents and people who are around children, uncles, aunts, what you can do again is a conscious offer. You can say, a kid sitting by himself, you can look interested into a coin and leave it there beside them. They
Mm.
might come and explore it, they might not. We have the
Mhm.
agency to offer something to them, and if we the skill of the improviser, I think, is to not be that connected to it and to know, okay, 9 out of 10 mightn't work or whatever it is, but
Mhm.
still worth doing. And even the gesture of, I'm interested in you and you mightn't want to play with this, I think they still take it on as, oh yeah, that person is interested in me. And it might mean something down the line that they can approach you if they have an offer of their own.
It might not even be about that moment in time
Hmm
that an engagement will take place, if it does at all, but maybe just planting the seed of potential interaction in the future might be a very positive thing for this kid.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually a good point. And there's a thing that you can learn working with children in more of a professional setting or like a workshopy setting. And this is also
Mhm.
true for teenagers and preteens, particularly teenagers, where there might be someone standing back or standing off, and you can give them loads of energy and they still will not want to engage, which is fine. And the skill is learning that. But as you kind of said, I think the other thing that you're offering them, if you can meet it at the right energy and the right way of approaching them, is saying, you've contacted them in the eye. If you know their name, you use their name and you say,
Mhm.
hey, look, I want you to be here. Mayor, no pressure if you don't want to be, but I'm interested in having you here. They might come in on their own accord later. If you check in with
Yeah.
them later on in the session, again, they at the end you're showing an interest in this person, and then and if it might happen in the session or it might not, but that I think it is very powerful to have someone who show that, okay, I am interested in you, particularly if you're the kind of person or child or teenager who does withdraw, because
Mhm.
one, we don't know what that's a result of. Maybe it was something traumatic, but in the regular ups and downs and movement through life, people, and particularly these days, we're very conscious of boundaries. Someone says no, okay, you leave them back. They know what they want, which is
Mhm.
obviously true. But there's also something in, again, we're adults or we're professionals or we're skilled in this, and we say, it's important for someone to say, okay, they don't want to be engaged right now, but I'm still going to check in with them. I'm still going to give them some eye contact. I might give them their name, might give them a positive word. And
Mhm.
I think that's very powerful for people who withdraw themselves. Sometimes people need an invitation, or sometimes people need to know that they're just
Yeah.
wanted in the space.
That's what I was thinking when you were talking about that is invitation. They are invited to participate up to whatever level of engagement they want,
Hmm.
and they choose this time or some time in the future.
Hmm.
One of the things that I'm really interested in is you talked about how you have taught kids, you've worked with kids, you've coached. When have you had times where safety was an issue and you've had to balance between the playfulness, the interaction, and the I need to keep everybody safe in this space?
Hmm. Yeah, it does happen quite a lot. And there's safety in terms of their actual physical safety and everything like this. And then there's safety in
Mhm.
terms of like child protection, and you don't want to,
Yeah.
kids want to go and cuddle you and hold your hand and climb on you. And you're like, "Oh, but we shouldn't cross this touch barrier. We have to keep professional." So
Sure.
I think there's ways of being gentle and playful and giving that first kind of warning. It's all in the setup, right? If you're setting up a game or scenario, you make sure that it's clear that they know where it is. And again, not in a lecture way, in a fun way. So you give the objective is we cannot cross that line. Very serious voices like this. It's part of the world, part of the play, it's part of the game
Mhm.
that we cannot do this. I think is an easier thing to say before we start. Don't cross that line, whatever it is, that kind of
Oh,
way.
challenge accepted.
Exactly. So there's the skill of knowing what it is to set something up. Then
Yeah.
if someone's crouching, there's a light way of bringing someone back in. You really got to know, actually, I'm a professional and I'm responsible for this child's safety. And then there's
Mhm.
a way of breaking out of character and being strict without being angry or terrifying and killing the mood. I know
Mhm.
we need to stop. You can't do this, or we can't move on. And I think kids can take that and move on. And if they take it and move on, and then you give them back a smile, give them the eye contact, I don't hate you. And I think that's often what people who work well with all people, really, but children and teenagers in particular, when maybe they shouldn't be in that field or something, is
Mhm.
when crossing the line results in you are bad or something like this, then there suddenly becomes a block and the kid can't engage with what you're doing anymore. Really, it's just, look, I understand you're a child, you're going to want to climb on this.
I
I'm the
want to
same.
too.
Yeah, 100%. I want to keep you engaged for this whole thing. You've been doing great up to now. If I don't want to
Mhm.
kill this moment by having to lay down the law, so I can just be a bit strict. I know that we know that, so we know it's happening. And then I'm going to say, but we're still happy that you're here.
You mentioned being a professional, and I was remiss not at the beginning of the conversation to ask you, what is your professional background? Where do you come from? How do you know the things that I'm asking you about?
Oh, well, that is another can of worms.
Is it?
Um,
Okay.
but at the moment, I'm freelance, so I work a lot in theatre, sometimes performing, sometimes devising, sometimes stage managing. A lot of children's theatre. I think I've just kind of ended up that way. When I was younger, I would have worked a lot with summer camps, those kind of things. So that would have been good training for engaging in that kind of way.
Yeah.
And more recently, I've been volunteering with children's charities abroad that work with children in vulnerable situations in terms of playing with them. For me, it has kind of drifted away from that kind of work, and now
Hmm.
I'm drifting back towards it. In all the stuff I'm making in theatre, I'm interested in immersive theatre and interactive stuff for children, where
Hmm.
we're inviting them to come and play on this journey with us. And we as adults, we create the atmosphere, we create the stories or something, but there's a way for them to engage and give something back. That's stuff I'm really interested in exploring. And then just the actual play. I suppose for a lot of my time, I would be a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. And this is
Yeah.
something where, as you kind of learn things and you put names on things, that, oh, okay, I do have a skill in the kind of things we've been talking about in terms of
Hmm.
running a session, engaging kids, making them feel seen, making them safe, giving them an atmosphere, and then also being able to recognize it's so important to play and to improvise in a playful way with
Hmm.
children, your own children or your niece or nephew, or if you're more professional with other kids who might need that attention. It's the more you hear feedback, and maybe we take it for granted, but when you see that, you're like giving them that joy, but giving them that confidence, giving them that win in that day. And you're building so much through play. And it's also such a path of least resistance in some ways, if you can,
Yeah.
to teach something or to impart a lesson. It is a path of least resistance in terms of, as you said, if you just tell someone, children, to do things, they're not going to do it. They're not going to understand why, but you show them through a game or through playing, I think, is often a more effective way.
It's funny because as you were saying that, what came to my head was the power of the play path. If you wanted to sort of summarize that, in a way, it offers so much more than the direction because it's the exploration of the thing.
Mhm.
And so then you learn it, which is how we learn most things as kids, right? Is through
Yeah,
playing with them
yeah.
and manipulating it and figuring out, okay, it works this way, it doesn't work that way. What does that look like in terms of an engagement with a kid to enable that play? From coming in the room and there's a kid there and they're told by their parent that they're going to be here at this time. How do you get that kid to be like, yeah, let's go? Or whatever it is that you're doing. How do you get that kid to start connecting with you and then moving to whatever it is that is going to be happening?
That is a hard thing to know. I think it depends, and again, it's kind of it's about reading a group, reading a room. If you're in a big group, oftentimes the question is you need to come with more energy than them,
Yeah.
and be super clear in your instructions of what we're doing. And it's also the attitude, and it's not do this or please can you do this. Is we're all doing this. This is going to be fun. Come on, it's that invitation, and 9 times out of 10, kids will follow that in terms of getting in with a real workshop. But then there is, again, as I was kind of saying earlier, there's another way. There's other ways that because of other children, how they engage, and like that is also the challenge throughout. Like let's say you have a quiet child, and you can come in with all the energy in the world. That's going to be way too much.
It's
So I mean,
terrifying them.
right? So you need to,
Yeah.
if you could spot that, then you can say, okay, well, from a distance, can we make eye contact? Can they handle the eye contact? Can I show interest in an often thing you might do is show interest in an object or something else. So it's not direct focus on them. There's things about body language where you don't want to be directly on them. We're
Mhm.
showing interest in an object or something like this. And okay, can you notice if they're interested while you're at this object? Okay, can you offer it to them maybe at a distance that they can interact with it? So again, that's one small example
Yeah.
of how you invite a different skill. And then there's other things you might have. I work with teenagers and
Mhm.
teenage boys. Again, they're all different, but there's some who are going to be too cool to get involved. And it's like,
Totally. Yeah.
how do I stay in my character, show them a bit of respect, show them that I want them to do something, give them a quick win so that they
Mhm.
achieve something with me, and then I say, okay, I respect you, I'm going to keep moving on. And that
Yeah.
might just be enough so that they think that breaks down that they need to put on a front with you. It's
Mhm.
particularly if you're trying to be a clowny character or something a bit more silly. You don't want them to think that they need to put up this front. You say, I'm here and I want to play with you.
What is a quick win? You mentioned for teenage boys in particular. I have a 14-year-old son, and God, if I could give him some wins. You know,
Yeah. And it probably is harder for parents because there is that automatic dynamic of you're a loser, right?
right?
It,
That is just where I live, you
yeah.
know?
So there's probably only so much you can do. But like, I suppose, yeah, as for me, is probably a young-ish a man who, again, and there's things you can show is that, that who's confident in a scenario.
Uh,
Even giving them a bit of attention is a win. Knowing their name is a win. Um,
yeah.
I think just fist bumping all the time, giving them some respect. If you're doing a little bit of magic, can you have a little bit of a joke with them? For younger guys, maybe it's a physical kind of challenge, like a push up or something. It is very much context dependent, but there is a thing of saying, yeah, okay, I'm interested in you. There also is a thing of like, we have these ideas, particularly of teenagers when they're in gangs. No, I don't want to engage. And I can say it's usually just not true. For so
Really?
many teenagers,
Yeah.
you mightn't see it as a parent because it's the hardest thing in the world to engage a parent. But as a professional coming in, we work with teenagers, they want to
Uh,
be silly, they want to be fun. And there is that level of, particularly when you're doing workshops with groups of teenagers, it's very difficult to get them to do anything on their own in front of other people. There's a
yeah.
skill. Okay, how do I get them to do something as a group so that no one is being watched at the same time? If you're trying to move it along, that they're doing something a bit more by themselves, how do you take the eyes off them so that everyone is doing something at the same time? So there's kind of skills like this. But I mean, my experience is like, again, as we all know, teenagers, they want to be seen as adults and as real people.
Yeah.
Home, that's difficult. But as when you're home and you're interacting, you can kind of give them more respect and kind of say, okay, I'm going to be silly. this is how I'd be silly with your teacher. I'm going to be
Mhm.
silly with you, and I'm not going to treat you like a child, but I'm still a silly person, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One of the things I liked about what you've been saying is that in each situation, you're coming at it with what works here
Mm.
with this person or with this group in this space for whatever it is we're doing. So it's not like I'm going to do this thing every time. It's
Mm.
more of a who are you? What offer are you providing? All right, now how do I do something with that? you know?
Yeah. And that is the scary thing, and that's the hard thing because you're going into a session and you're kind of like, I don't know how this is going to go.
Yeah.
They're not going to smile, they're not going to act, they're not going to engage. And those sessions do happen as well.
Yeah.
Um, I suppose it's that kind of inner resilience or experience from improv to know, okay, this usually works out somehow. I'll find it if I can stay open, if I can breathe. To bring it back to your improv training, ideally, you want to be responding to your scene partner. And there's something that someone said to me once, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was along the lines of, there's no kind of bad scene partners. It's just a different challenge, a different playing, right? If you're in improv classes and stuff, you start learning quotes, rules, and guidelines anyway. And
Yeah.
and then you come up with someone and they're doing stuff and they're blocking you or whatever, and you're like, oh God, and you can get really frustrated. And I have been that person. But
Yeah.
also the skill then is, can you notice in that moment and say, okay, how do I play with this, right? How do we
Exactly.
still, this is what's going to make it really fun with you. So improv in terms of a training is somewhere where you can get reps in and to do this all the time to practice that, like, okay, oh my god, when your anxiety level starts rising, and to go
Mhm.
back into your breathing and whatever it is you need to do to calm yourself down, get some presence. Okay, this is just fun, we're just doing makey ups, it's
Yeah.
not that serious. And so then in terms of going back to working with children or teenagers, that anxiety still does rise, and it's the experience of being like, okay, breathe, this is just fun, in an hour this will be over no matter what, but how can we play with this?
So it's being aware of what's going on inside of you as well as how you're
Mm.
interacting with them. You mentioned the breathing, sort of bringing yourself back down so that the anxiety doesn't get you up of, oh, this isn't working. Oh, crap, I'm failing here.
Mm.
What are some of the key steps in that process? Things that people could be aware of about themselves that allows them that grace to be like, let's just see how this plays out.
I'm still learning that.
Sure, we
um,
all are.
but yeah, I think
Yeah.
there is a thing of just, yeah, I always think this in terms of just getting experience and reps in. Like if I'm ever
Mhm.
teaching a beginner's improv class, I'm very conscious to give very little, if any, feedback apart from maybe a positive one or two. And let's just keep churning this up because you can understand so much in theory, but you need to get that into your body while you're learning. If you're doing improv classes and things, I do think a bit of side coaching in a class is super helpful. You can know this is more of a thing during musical theater improv because it's more
Mhm.
structured and you've got music and you can have a lulls. I think it's super helpful because usually for an audience, when you're watching an improv scene, particularly with musical theater, you know where it should go. You
Yeah.
can see things a lot clearer. When you're in it, you're in that panic state and you can see that building up. It's useful to have someone on the side just being like, Declan, take a breath, reconnect, eye contact. Here, what did you just mention 2 minutes ago? Ah, you're back on track. So these things, you
Yeah.
can get those voices in your head. I mean, in terms of like actual mantras. I don't know if you know Improbable Theatre. They do a lot of improv work in the UK.
No, I
For
don't.
theatre, they're really good, but they
Mhm.
use a thing called open space, which is a way of organizing people and doing meetings and things like this. But
Mhm.
the rules or guidelines of open space is the people who showed up are the right people. When it begins, it's the right time. Whatever happened is the only thing that could have happened. Come as you are. I keep them in my head to kind of be like, okay, let's not be too judgy. And even when I'm coming on to a scripted show, I used to get very much in my own head before I went on stage. After the first night, you'd be like, you wouldn't have the adrenaline anymore, and you think, Jesus, I need to get my energy up. How do I
Mhm.
get into the right state of mind? Now I kind of can just be like, come as you are. If you've had a lethargic day, that's fine. If you've had an excited day, that's fine. If you had a nothing kind of day, that's fine. Accept what you're feeling at the moment, and then go in and be open to respond to whatever is given to you by someone else. You'll get somewhere interesting. I think it's very much an experience thing. In terms of improv training, I feel like if you're working on stuff, it is useful to have one thing to work on. If you're going into scene, like I want to focus on where I'm placed in this scene. I want to focus on my body and height, on this position, or I'm going to work on my voice. And because there is so much, right? There's so much you can read, there's so much you can, but there's
Yeah.
only so much you can execute and be present at the same time. So I think, yeah, those kind of things in terms of your training are all good. And then it is just a reps thing. Hopefully, you get to a point where you start catching yourself in scenes. If you're getting to that anxious place and you say, okay, can I just take a step back and breathe? Because I would sometimes do it myself where I'm like, I want this to go somewhere. It's not going that way. Okay, let go with the
Let
way
go.
it's going.
Exactly. And all of those come back to then interacting with kids. You and the kid are the right people in that moment.
Hmm.
You came as you are, they came as they are. Like,
Yeah.
there's no change in that. And letting go of the expectation of where this is going. What are we going to achieve
Hmm.
because of this interaction? And let's just see how it goes.
Yeah.
It sounds like those pieces of advice for improv were also very useful for the interaction with whatever age level you're working with, not just kids really, but
Yeah.
just anybody.
And the interesting thing is, I think it's so funny when you put it like that. Yeah, like that's so obviously a crossover. And I suppose the interesting thing is that when you improvise on a stage, you're with another improviser and you're both meeting and trying to do this thing. And even the term improviser puts a little bit of a mask up. When you're
Yeah.
playing with or engaging with a child or a teenager, you've no expectation of them to be that. They are just responding as they are, which
Yeah.
is great because it teaches you so much. I think all those things, the improvising, give you the reps into exploring that so that in your real life you can have some clarity of mind,
Yeah.
hopefully. Because you would never say after a play session with the kid, well, you might, but you couldn't be like, well, my scene partner wasn't that good, right? That makes no sense. But
Not until you're out of the room.
yeah, she was not on it. Her character was all over the place. But also,
No, you wouldn't.
but
Yeah.
in terms of having the outcome, we kind of sometimes have this idea of what we
Yeah.
wanted the day to be like, and then on the way to get there, because we were so focused on it, we ignored what was just happening. You go to the playground with your kids and you imagine this lovely day and you have a picnic and you brought the
Mhm.
ball because the last time you had a great experience kicking around the ball, and they see some ducks and they just want to chill and watch some ducks. And you can keep pushing, trying to remake what you wanted, or the skill is to notice, oh yeah, that's what I want at this moment. And
Yeah.
really, the skill is I should really be focusing on what they want, and we'll discover something new.
Absolutely. I think that's just the key thing to keep in mind with those interactions is what are they interested in? What are they offering their focus on?
Mhm.
And then how do I support, reinforce, and play with that?
Yeah,
Whatever
and
that is.
I think that is when it's on this direct engagement. And
Mhm.
then there's something in terms of offering without expectation of what am I interested in and what's fun for me. And it's different with children because, they often want everything to be about themselves. But if you
Yeah.
have being authentically interested and opening up whatever space that is so that they can observe it, even
Hmm.
potentially take part, but not having the expectation that they will take part.
Hmm.
But it is important to have, hey, what am I interested in? What's fun for me? And as the adult, you're the only one who can kind of take a cognitive assessment of both of you because the child is
Yeah.
just in the moment. But
Yeah.
there is value of having what's fun for me, and can I leave the door open for them to come and engage with it if they want, but not force it on them, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Depending on the age of the child, simply pointing at clouds and being like, oh, those are interesting, could be a doorway to who knows what. So
Yeah.
like, yeah. And you could have pointed at the ducks, or you could, a
Hmm.
butterfly flies by and you're like, oh wow.
And sometimes you
Yeah,
get left hanging, like going for a high five and no one gives it. And you say, "Look at the ducks," and they say, "Well, I don't care,"
exactly.
right?
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I have one last question for you. If you were restarting your training, your career, your interaction with kids, and you're kind of new to this space, and you're going to be going into the room for the first time to teach a workshop,
Hmm.
what would you today tell that you or offer that you as a here's something that might help?
I think for me, I think a very like practical bit of advice self would be before you start anything, just go and engage and chat to people. Use first names, get first names, lock them in.
Mm.
high five, fist bumps, whatever. And that informal part of it that's not before a workshop or that's not before whatever it is
Hmm.
so great because the thing is, like children, every single person, children and teenagers particularly, they just want you to engage with them and show them respect, show them interest. You don't have to be the funniest person or the most fun, but just giving them some interest. I always said this working with youth clubs is like, there might be 200 people on the camp, whatever, and you say that's impossible. Learn some first names. You can rote learn some names pretty quickly, and it's so much easier and so validating for someone to say, "Oh, hey, Jeremy, could you pass that over here?" Or Declan, really good job with that
Yeah.
ball. Use your
You're
name.
recognized.
100%. And
Yes.
because we're talking about children, teenagers, and we're adults, and particularly, I mean, I always think this in terms of young men and like being a younger guy myself, it's like we often don't realize the kind of position that we have in their heads. And like,
Hmm.
particularly as men and guys, that like have a guy who's maybe has a bit of confidence and is running a session, it's like, oh, and he knows my name. He knows my name. Hey, I'm
Yeah.
here. I'm here to be with it because he knows my name and
Yeah.
he's engaged with me. I'm part of this. So I would say that's
Yeah.
eye contact, high fives, get names, chat for a little bit, then go.
I love that connection before you're doing anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it gives them justification. It gives them confidence. It gives them this is an okay, safe space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Very cool, man. This has been such an enlightening conversation for me. I have not been in this space in the way you have. And it's really cool to learn about how you can use all these same tools in an area that I haven't played in yet.
Well, thank you so much. You don't really get to talk about it often. When you're first putting your thoughts together, you're like, oh, actually, yes, I do think this.
Well, very cool. I would love to keep this conversation going. So maybe at some point, if I'm still doing this in a year or two, or even shorter time than that, get you back and we can talk some more. I can learn more about what you're doing, how you do it, and maybe we can get some real world examples of certain things that have happened over time.
Yeah, I'd love that.
That would be so cool, man. Well, thank you.